You are welcome back. In today's video, we are going to dive into the main problem of Nigeria, the issue surrounding Nigeria, the main problem facing Nigeria, and why Nigeria can never be developed. It can never develop. That is why the reason why you are seeing things happening the way it is happening today is because of this way they have already structured this country. They have structured it in a way that it can never develop. And who that makes this structure to happen this way? And who sold Nigeria? Who sold Nigeria to Fulanis, to France, and to Jagaban? Because the reason why you are seeing all those things, terrorists have taken over everywhere, and bandits has already taken over everywhere. And once they hear that the Trump administration is coming, or any force is coming to wipe out those terrorists that is taking control over every places, you hear the government, they will start complaining. Some of the northern leaders, the Fulanis, the jihadists that is taking over everywhere, they will start complaining because they have already taken Nigeria, they already bought Nigeria with their money. That is why Nigeria, you see everywhere, they complain. No matter how you complain, the government will never listen to you. And if you like, you cry from now to tomorrow, nobody will even listen to you. If you get help from above or from the foreign countries, they will be looking at it as if they are coming to take away their resources, because Nigeria has already been sold to the bandits, to the terrorists, and to the Fulani herdsmen. So Dele Farotimi is going to explain to us a lot concerning what is going on in Nigeria, the problem facing Nigeria today, and how Nigeria can be tackled, the solution, and if there is no solution, how Nigerian can be tackled. So don't skip any part of it. Try to watch to the end, because this today's video is full of a lot of knowledge and lots of information to share with you. So as you're about to watch, like, subscribe, and make sure you share the video to go around. Let others learn from this and also understand what is going on in the country.
Who sold Nigeria to Tinubu? Who sold Nigeria to the Fulanis? Who sold Nigeria to the Islamist terrorists? Who sold Nigeria to the Chagoris and to France? Is it possible that we may redeem this sale? Because how else do you explain that a functional state is being run in the manner in which Nigeria is being run? How do you explain that we are where we are? So I sat back and I thought about it. What is it about us that has rendered us uniquely evil? What is it about Nigeria? Because there is really very little that is unique about us as a colonial enterprise, because everywhere else, Britain had colonies. India was a colony of Britain. Today is a world power. China was substantially subjugated by the West. Today, they are world power. Malaysia, almost every nation outside of the Western Hemisphere at one point or the other was a colony. Ghana was a colony. The same history that Nigeria shares with other African countries. So why is it that we do not appear to have risen above a sold country, a purchased territory? I sat down and I thought about it. Is it unique that a country was purchased in the manner of Nigeria? Yes, Nigeria was purchased, by the way. Yeah, it was purchased in 1867. It was purchased by the British Crown from the Royal Niger Company, which had a charter over the territory largely in the southern part of Nigeria. So the British Crown revoked the charter and purchased it back. And as at that time, I believe it was £867,000 that was paid to the Royal Niger Company to purchase Nigeria by the British Crown. So Nigeria was a purchased territory. Now, the legality of its sale is another argument for historians and for political theorists. But I have need to mention it so that we begin to understand where our problem began. We were treated as a territory that contained certain things, including human beings that were treated as cartels, including gold, this, that. That was how we were sold. A territory was sold. Commercial proposition. But this is not new to us. America bought Alaska from the Russians in 1867. No, sorry. the late 1800, they purchased it from them. That was in 1867. $7.2 million was paid. Seward was the Secretary of State who purchased it. He purchased Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million. It was known as the Seward Folly. That was a joke. He went and purchased a nice garden until they found gold in Alaska, I think in 1897 or thereabout. So it is not unique that a territory is sold. What is unique is that persons were sold without their consent. But that is, as I have said, a story for political historians to deal with. But there is a consequence for the way Nigeria was founded. The British purchased a territory, a business proposition. And in purchasing a business proposition, like any good business owner, you have to figure out how to run their business. You are already, of course, familiar with British doctrine of indirect rule. But indirect rule, as with every other thing in life, has its consequences. Indirect rule meant that the British decided to work with existing structures, and where the structures did not exist, create structures that mimic the structure by which they prefer to administer the vast territory that they have now given to themselves. Imagine this: the southern and northern protectorate, colony of Lagos, merged together. Right? You probably had, at the most, I doubt that there were ever up to 100 British administrators available to run the entire enterprise. Even the soldiers had to be sourced locally. They only had white officers. Have you ever pictured the Hausa? Have you ever pictured the Fulani header? Young boy sometime, probably sometime barely in his teenage years. And you find that this kid is the one that is controlling a vast herd. It is pretty much the same thing when it came to the way the British ran the empire. It was the same concept. Nominal direction by the British district officer working with the existing or constructed local governance capacity. So the British came in what is today known as northern Nigeria. I am not going to be doing too much to repeat what I have spoken about or that I have made clear and have made available. Go and download The Imperative of the Nigerian Revolution. I've touched on this extensively and the book is free. Download it from my website, delifarotimi.com. It's available free. Download it. But I'll touch on it briefly. In building its governance structure, the extreme dependency was placed on indirect rule because it was the only way this could work, given the limited human resource that could be deployed to Nigeria and almost everywhere across the world, because the British had a huge colonial enterprise. So what happened was that in northern Nigeria, there were already two governance structures covering most parts of it. That was the Borno Empire and the Sokoto Caliphate. What happened essentially was that these two had the colonial superstructure layered over them. I don't know what else I can do. I'm having repeated complaints about my audio. You would have to manage it like that today because I don't know what else I may be able to do to help matters. So let's keep going. So you had a situation where they layered their governance structure over the existing Islamist empires that you had in northern Nigeria. Now, this Islamist empire, and I mean Islamist empire because they were essentially based on Islamic rule. The Borno Empire and the Sokoto Caliphate. Now, there were multiple ethnicities who had not been conquered either deliberately or because they couldn't. These people were brought largely they were brought under Fulani and Borno influence. And in some cases, their chiefdoms were recognized, but of course, they were given lesser status. So you have things like the Nupes, they were there, but at the end of the day, what you have was a situation where, because the Fulani controlled a larger expanse of land, they had by far better organized, centralized, highly systemized governance structure, and so the Borno Empire, this became the model for Nigerian governance. In southern Nigeria, you find that in Yoruba land, our Obas didn't have those kind of absolute powers, and they were also not necessarily, they didn't have religious powers of the sort that you find with emirs and the sheikh of Borno or the sultan of Sokoto. They didn't have those kind of theocratic powers. But at the end of the day, what you found was that the Britain administered Nigeria to the exclusion of citizens. They dealt with agents. That's why they could never talk about British authority in Nigeria. So they had to deal with nominal agents of Britain whom they treated as speaking for me and you, or at least our ancestors. I'll give you a case in point, a major fraud. The Alafin and the Oyos were taken essentially as the voice of the Yoruba. So any agreement with the Alafin was taken as being valid over the whole of Yoruba land, regardless of whether they are independent states who had either rebelled against the authority of the Alafin or who are never really directly under his authority. You found that they preferred to deal with totems, obas, emirs, and in the southeast, they created Igwes and what have you. They created all kinds of warrant chiefs. In the south, of course, they created all kinds of trading houses and created persons that they could speak with on behalf of persons they never consulted. That is how the modern Nigerian state was coupled together. There was never discussions with citizens. They dealt with totems. That was the beginning of the sale of Nigeria. Because when you do not have the voice of those who are meant to be citizens aggregated to form the basis of the sovereignty of the state, when you can continue to deal with representatives, unappointed, unanointed, unelected representatives instead of the people, and what these unanointed representatives of the people say is almost always a reflection or echo of what the colonial interest desired. It's the same thing today. Who elected Tinubu? What happened to the Nigerian non-aligned status that we are all of a sudden the cowboy of West Africa? We are the ones who are busy retaking Benin. Who gave him that kind of power? Where did he derive the authority from? Who sold Nigeria to Tinubu? These are the kind of questions that one necessarily has to begin to ask. So the consequence of indirect rule is the creation of warrant chiefs who have continued to rule Nigeria because they are completely bereft of legitimacy and their power do not flow from the will of the people. But yet, the colonial powers have no problem with dealing with these persons on our behalf because these persons represent their interest. So now, if Nigeria was sold to Britain, who did Britain sell Nigeria to? Britain simply handed Nigeria to the Fulani, the favorite charge. That is history that will not bear any argument again. The structuring of Nigeria from bringing Robertson to come and midwife Nigeria's independence, removing Macpherson. These were all deliberate ploys designed to hand Nigeria over to the Fulanis. This was already predicated by the rich census. There were multiple things that were done to ensure that power was handed to the Fulani, and that's fine. I have already spoken about hegemonies. All around the world, countries have developed on the back of hegemonies. It has always taken the overbearing influence of an hegemony to develop a country. I spoke last week about the development of America by the West hegemony, the development of Britain essentially by the English. I've spoken before to the development of India by the Brahmins. It is normal that everywhere all around the world an hegemony would come at the end of the day to develop a place. That is why the character of most countries, you will find that the character is shaped by the hegemony that ended up influencing the path of its modern state. This is normal everywhere in the world. So that the Fulani hegemony was favored by the British for his own selfish interest, that's completely fine. It's a matter of history. It does not bear argument any longer. But the question is this: what have the Fulani done with this power? When I say the Fulani, let me be clear that I speak to his aristocracy, or what should have been his aristocratic class. The aristocratic class of which power was handed, led by people like Ahmadu Bello, they had enough understanding of nation building. And that was why, in spite of the urgings of Gumi's father, who was the Grand Kadi of northern Nigeria, in spite of his urgings and machinations, Ahmadu Bello knew better than to insist on the application of Sharia outside of personal civil matters. And that was what led to the introduction of the penal code in northern Nigeria, when the rest of southern Nigeria was using the criminal code. The penal code was crafted to take care of Muslim sensibilities and to ensure that the Christians in northern Nigeria, who are by no means a minority, let's be clear about that the Christians in northern Nigeria would not feel threatened by the rise of the Islamists. Ahmadu Bello understood the need for this. Whether you even say it's about Takia or real politics, in spite of his own instinct. The fact is that based on this clear understanding of the need to build a modern state, Ahmadu Bello ensured that in place of Islamic penal law, what you had was the penal code, which was lifted essentially largely after studying the Pakistani system, which required the same. So what you had was a compromise designed to preserve the illusion of one north, because it was behind that illusion that the northern prerogative was exercised by the Fulani aristocracy, ably headed at the time of independence by Ahmadu Bello. Now, when you begin to understand that this power that was given those, understood by those who got the original license, they also understood that it was critical that that power be carried with respect and with an understanding from the sensibilities of those in whose name the power had been created. I will explain myself. In 1962, you had what was known as the TV riots. The TV riot was not unique to the TVs, but TVs were probably the largest of the ethnic groups that had not been dominated by the Fulanis, because they fought, the Idomas as well. So you had a situation where the Middle Belt was in a state of famine. And this was because persons were overreaching themselves and the illusion of one north was being broken. Consequences of this led to the Western regional crisis, because there was a need to make up for what was being lost in the Middle Belt. The illusion of one north was being shattered and there was a need to couple together a coalition that would retain the Fulani veto. That led to the rupture of Nigeria. I'm saying all of this so that you begin to understand where we are in relation to Nigeria. Now, who sold Nigeria? Nigeria has been sold to the Fulani, I told you. It is the misadministration of the Fulani veto that has led us to where we are today. I'll break it down. Every time power is unyoked to law, it is always bound to end up badly. The power that was granted, remember I told you, it wasn't granted to citizens. It was granted to totems and hegemony. The administration of that power, how it was administered, was always going to be critical to the way it would impact on the lives of the citizens. When the first coup happened, it happened because the victims of the hegemony rebelled against the use of its powers. When the second coup happened, it was because the beneficiaries of the veto needed to retake the veto. And in retaking the veto, there was a recognition for balance. And this is why, in spite of the fact that Murtala Muhammad was the protective head of that coup in July 1966, he ceded power to the highest ranking northern officer, who was not a Fulani, but a northern minority.
Now, wow, it is very shocking. That is why you hear and you see everywhere the way the Northern Caliphate, the Fulanis, they have already taken over the whole places in Nigeria. And whenever you hear of division, they will tell you that Nigeria is indivisible, Nigeria is unnegotiable, which is who is benefiting from this entity or from this country called Nigeria? Nobody. The only people that is benefiting from it is those people that own the company, which is the presidency, the Fulanis, the bandits, the terrorists that are benefiting, and the British. So those people that is benefiting from this issue of Nigeria. The rest, they are suffering. And whenever you hear people stand up on their feet to defend or to speak against the injustice, they will send the security men to come and bring you down. That is what is happening in the country. So, this video is very long, and I will cut it here. So the next time we are going to finish it up. So this will be the part 1 of it, because He really explained a lot of things about these consequences of Nigeria and the problem Nigeria is facing, and how Nigeria has been fighting. Those who want to fight have been fighting to divide and for them to become free of their own, like the people of Biafra. They've been fighting for a long time for them to become free and to become freedom of their own country, for peace to reign. But still, everything is still happening the way it is happening due to those that has already bought Nigeria, has bought it with their life, with their blood, and with everything. And the main people that is supporting them are those that is in the hierarchy. So the presidents, the chiefs, and the armies, that those that is supporting those that bought it. So that is why Nigeria is not developing the way it is today. So that is it. I would like to hear your comment down below. Like, subscribe, and make sure you share the video to go around, let others hear and see things happening in Nigeria. I say thank you for watching.